I spent 3 hours preparing my grandson's 12th birthday party, making sure every detail was perfect. The cake, the decorations, the sense of ceremony I had always believed in. What I didn't prepare for was the moment he would hit me in front of everyone, or the moment my daughter-in-law would congratulate him for it. That was the day I learned that sometimes the cruelest betrayals come wrapped in birthday paper. Before we continue, please subscribe to Granny's Voice and write in the comments what time it is where you are watching from now. We might give you a shout-out in our next video. Today's shout-out goes to Sylvia Theodore from Palmdale, California. Thank you for being part of this great family. Now let me tell everything. I stood in the middle of the living room, gently adjusting the position of the birthday cake, making sure the frosting roses on the side facing the sofa were perfectly intact. 67 years of life have taught me that details are everything. Whether it was the neatness of my handwriting on the chalkboard when I taught, or the sense of ceremony in life. Mom, don't fuss so much. It's just Ethan's birthday. We can keep it simple. Daniel's voice came from the kitchen, his mouth still chewing on the pigs in a blanket I had just pulled from the oven. I pushed my reading glasses up my nose and didn't answer. 12 is an important age. Back when I was a teacher, we called it a critical period for character formation. Although nobody pays much attention to those things anymore, I insisted on giving my grandson a proper birthday party. Grandma, where are my friends? Ethan came bounding down the stairs, his brand new Nikes leaving faint marks on the hardwood floor. I opened my mouth to remind him to be careful, but I swallowed the words back. It was his birthday after all. They should be here any minute, I said. I had Mr. Jackson pick them up. I reached out to fix his upturned collar, but he dodged away with a flicker of annoyance. Cassandra descended the stairs in high heels, a designer dress clinging to her well-maintained figure, showing no sign of being the mother of a 12-year-old boy. Mom, why are you still wearing that old thing? She said. We're going to be taking pictures for social media today. I looked down at my navy blue cardigan. The cuffs were indeed a bit frayed. It was a gift from my students on my 60th birthday 3 years ago. Pure cashmere and the most comfortable thing I owned. Mrs. Thompson, we're here. A group of 5 or 6 kids Ethan's age poured through the front door, all children of my former students. A smile immediately spread across my face as I welcomed them in, telling them to wash their hands and have some snacks. The party was a lively affair for 2 hours. I watched Ethan, surrounded by his friends, blow out the candles, and for a fleeting moment, I saw Daniel 30 years ago. Back then, we lived in a small apartment in university housing. Daniel's birthday cake was no bigger than the palm of my hand. Yet, he was as happy as if he had been given the whole world. Mom, take this, Daniel said, handing me a greasy paper plate with a large slice of cake drowning in frosting. I took it silently and walked toward the kitchen. In the living room, Cassandra was holding up her phone, live streaming the gift opening session. Look what our baby got, she exclaimed. This is the newest game console on the market. It costs over $500. Thank you, Aunt Michelle. A knot tightened in my chest. Just last week at the parent-teacher conference, the teacher had specifically mentioned that Ethan's grades were slipping badly and recommended reducing his screen time. I hesitated, wondering if I should say something, but I saw Ethan had already torn open the packaging with great excitement. Grandma. He suddenly rushed over to me, his eyes shining with an alarming intensity. I want this one, too. Tyler said it has the best graphics. I knelt to be at his eye level. Ethan, didn't we agree? You'd get a new game console after you improved your grades on your report card. I don't care. I want it, and I want it now. His voice suddenly rose, drawing the gazes of the other children. I felt a wave of embarrassment, gently tugging his arm to lead him toward the kitchen. Honey, Grandma saved your favorite chocolate chip cookies for you. Smack. A loud slap landed on my face, sending my reading glasses flying. A fiery pain shot through my left cheek, and I staggered, grabbing the dining table to keep from falling. The entire living room fell silent. Ethan, why would you hit your grandmother? The words escaped my lips, but they were drowned out by my son's laughter. Mom, he's just playing around with you, Daniel said, walking over and clapping his son on the shoulder. Good one, kid. You've got a strong arm. I stared at my son in disbelief, but he was busy winking at Cassandra. My sophisticated daughter-in-law walked over, clapping her hands. Well, Mom, go on and hit him back, she taunted. I dare you. Not that you would. Ethan held his head high, a triumphant look on his face. My gaze swept across the faces of the three of them, and a sudden dizziness washed over me. It's nothing, I heard myself say calmly as I bent down to pick up my glasses. I turned and walked toward the stairs. Behind me, the sounds of laughter and chatter quickly resumed, as if the whole incident had been nothing but a figment of my imagination. Climbing the stairs, my knees ached more than usual. I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. My left cheek was still throbbing. In the mirror on my vanity, a white-haired old woman stared back at me, a faint red mark on her right cheek. I slowly walked to the vanity and opened the locked drawer. Inside, various documents were neatly arranged. On top was a receipt for a $30,000 transfer. The recipient being the Alumni Endowment Fund of the city's top prep school. This was a portion of the life savings my husband and I had accumulated, a price to ensure Ethan could get into a prestigious school. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my bank's client manager. Mrs. Thompson, is everything all right this late in the evening? Ryan, yes. First thing tomorrow morning, I need you to cancel that $30,000 transfer. Yes, the one to the academy. Let's just say I've reconsidered. Hanging up, I took off my glasses and wiped them. Outside, the sounds of the party were still clearly audible. I gently touched my cheek. It didn't hurt anymore, but somewhere deep inside me, it felt as though something had been torn open. The day before school started, they would receive the notice from the school. I could almost picture the scene. I pulled open the innermost drawer and took out a photograph of my late husband. Oh, William, I whispered. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? In the picture, he was smiling as calm as the day he left me 20 years ago. That night, for the first time in a long while, I dreamed of the past. I dreamed of Daniel as a little boy, running a high fever and me carrying him on my back for 2 miles to the hospital. His hot little face was pressed against my neck as he softly called out, Mommy. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a soft light on my vanity. I carefully applied foundation to cover the faint bluish bruise on my left cheek. As my fingers touched the skin, the stinging pain seemed to return. Mom, we're heading out to work. Daniel's voice drifted up from downstairs, followed by the heavy thud of the front door. I paused, listening to the sound of the car engine fade into the distance. Finally, I was alone in the house. The ice pack hissed with white vapor as I took it from the freezer. I sat on a kitchen chair and gently pressed it to my face. The cold seeped into my skin, easing the dull, burning sensation. It reminded me of when Daniel was 7 and fell off the monkey bars, cutting his forehead. I had used an ice pack to soothe his wound just like this. He was such a good boy then, tears welling up in his eyes from the pain. Yet, he would say in his little voice, Mommy, it doesn't hurt. The community clinic was only a 10-minute walk from my house. I deliberately chose a weekday morning to avoid running into acquaintances. Mrs. Thompson, a young doctor, Martinez said, his brow furrowing the moment I took off my mask. What happened to your face? I accidentally bumped into a door, I said calmly, the prepared lie rolling off my tongue. Dr. Martinez looked like he wanted to say more, but ended up just sighing. I'll prescribe some anti-inflammatory cream. If it's not better in 3 days, you must come back for a follow-up. He paused. Mrs. Thompson, our hospital has a dedicated domestic violence counseling service if you ever need it. Thank you, but that won't be necessary. I interrupted him, managing a weak smile. It was truly an accident. Leaving the clinic, I sat on a bench in the hallway for a long time. The smell of disinfectant reminded me of William's last days in the hospital. Daniel had just started college and was swamped with coursework. I would rush to the hospital every day after work to take care of William by myself. The night he passed, Daniel couldn't make it back because of his final exams. It was me alone, holding his gradually cooling hand, watching him close his eyes. Margaret, is that really you? I looked up to see Patricia Brown standing before me. She was a colleague of mine from the teachers' college, now retired and living in the next neighborhood over. Patricia, I said, instinctively turning my face away, hoping she wouldn't notice the bruise. But years as a teacher had given Patricia a keen sense of observation. She sat down beside me and asked directly, "Who did it?" I shook my head, my throat suddenly tight. "It was Ethan, wasn't it?" She sighed. "I saw him shouting at you in the grocery store last week. You just smoothed it over, saying he was a teenager." I looked at her, stunned. "Margaret, there's something I've been holding back for a long time," Patricia said, lowering her voice. "Last winter, I saw Cassandra throw the sweater you knitted into the trash can in the community garden. Last month, I saw Ethan push you downstairs. Why do you keep putting up with it?" My fingers clenched the bag of medication, the plastic crinkling loudly. "I don't want to make things difficult for Daniel." "Daniel?" Patricia scoffed. "You think he doesn't know how his wife and son treat you? Margaret, you've been an educator your whole life with students all over the country. How can you let this happen in your own home?" She didn't finish, just squeezed my hand tightly. In that moment, I suddenly realized how clear my situation was to an outsider. When I got home, I went straight to the study. William's portrait sat quietly on the bookshelf, his smile gentle. I pulled open the bottom drawer and took out a manila envelope containing all our property documents. The deed to the house clearly had my name on it. This house in a prime school district was assigned by Williams University and later purchased with our joint savings. I opened my savings passbook. The transaction records for the last 5 years were dense. The down payment for Daniel's house when he got married, the money for a postpartum nurse Cassandra insisted on, and the endless tuition for Ethan's tutoring and extracurricular classes since he was little. I opened my laptop, created a new spreadsheet, and began entering the figures one by one. The number kept growing, finally stopping at an amount that startled me. $87,640. And that didn't even include the $30,000 I had set aside for the school donation. As evening fell, I heard the front door open and the sound of laughter. I quickly closed the laptop and put the documents back in their place. At dinner, I ate quietly, listening to them discuss their plans for the weekend. "Mom, you don't look so well," Daniel said suddenly. I looked up and met my son's probing gaze. "I might have a little cold," I replied softly. "Older people have weaker immune systems." "Mom, you should stay indoors more. The flu is bad this season," Cassandra said, placing a piece of fish in Ethan's bowl without even glancing at me. "Grandma didn't wash my school uniform today." Ethan suddenly chimed in. "We have an inspection tomorrow." "Oh, sweetie, don't worry," Cassandra said immediately. "Grandma's getting old and forgetful. Mommy will just toss it in the washing machine for you." I put down my chopsticks. "I'm finished. You all enjoy." As I stood up, I saw Cassandra give Daniel a look. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Mom, about that donation. It's all been arranged." I stood with my back to them, my voice so calm, it felt foreign even to me. "The bank is processing it." Upstairs, I locked the door and took out a new notebook from under my pillow. On the first page, I wrote the date and a simple sentence. They asked about the donation. Outside, the early spring wind rustled the new leaves. I sat by the window, watching the street lights turn on one by one like a string of illuminated teardrops. The glass door of the law firm reflected my slightly nervous figure. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. "Mrs. Thompson." Stephen Park, the lawyer, stood up from behind his desk and quickly came over to shake my hand. "It's been too long." I smiled and nodded. Stephen was one of William's students. His family had been poor, and William had helped support him. Now, he was a well-known civil lawyer in the city, but had always remained respectful toward us. "Are you facing some legal trouble?" he asked with concern, pouring me a cup of tea. I took a folder from my bag containing a copy of the house deed and the organized transfer records. "Stephen, I'd like to understand if I wanted to reclaim the house I currently live in. Is it legally possible?" Stephen was visibly taken aback. "You mean the house in the school district where Daniel lives?" I nodded and briefly explained the situation, though I omitted the slap. Some pains are hard to speak of, even to those you trust most. After listening, Stephen's brow furrowed. Mrs. Thompson, the deed is in your name, so you certainly have ownership, but the situation is complex. Daniel's family has lived there for over a decade, establishing de facto residency. Forcing them out might require legal proceedings. He looked through my transfer records, his expression growing more and more serious. Do you have any loan agreements or other written contracts for these financial transactions? I shook my head. That makes it difficult. Stephen sighed. Legally, these could be considered gifts. However, he looked up at me. If you can prove there was abuse or neglect, the situation would be different. Mrs. Thompson, have you ever? I cut him off. I just wanted to understand my options first. I changed the subject. What if I wanted to change my will? Leaving the law firm, the sunlight was so bright it hurt my eyes. Stephen's final words echoed in my ears. Mrs. Thompson, you must save all the evidence. Text messages, recordings, medical records, anything. I stood on the sidewalk, suddenly unsure of where to go. Home. That place filled with indifference and hostility. I checked my watch. It was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon. On an impulse, I called Patricia. The senior center. I repeated her suggestion. Yes, on the second floor of the cultural center. They have a legal lecture every Wednesday afternoon. Patricia's voice was full of energy. Today, it's Judge Bennett speaking on the protection of senior citizens' rights. Do you want to come? I knew the cultural center well. When William was alive, we often went there to see movies. The classroom on the second floor was already filled with older people. I quietly found a seat in the back row. Our nation's laws on the rights and interests of the elderly clearly state. On the stage, a spirited elderly man was speaking eloquently. He looked to be in his early 70s with a straight back and a resonant voice. Elder abuse includes physical abuse, emotional abuse, and financial exploitation. Judge Bennett's words struck my heart like a hammer. Many elderly people believe that enduring in silence is for the sake of family harmony, not realizing that this only emboldens the abuser. After the lecture, I gathered my courage and went up to him. Judge Bennett, I have a question. He listened patiently to my brief anonymous description, his gaze becoming sharp. Your situation already constitutes domestic violence and financial exploitation. I suggest you immediately take the following steps. Judge Bennett gave me a business card. It read Harold Bennett, retired judge, along with a contact number. He said if I needed further help, I could call him anytime. On the way home, my phone rang. The screen displayed Daniel's name. I hesitated before answering. Mom, where have you been? My son's voice was laced with impatience. Ethan's school just called. They said the donation hasn't been received yet. I gripped the phone, remembering the words of Stephen and Judge Bennett. The bank needs time to process it, I said calmly. How long does it take? Daniel's voice rose. Do you have any idea how many people are fighting for a spot in this school? Did you even go? I'll check with the bank again tomorrow, I said, and hung up. It was the first time in my life I had ever hung up on my son. That evening, Daniel came straight to my room the moment he got home. Mom, what is going on? He stood at the door, his face grim. I was sitting on the bed organizing documents and quickly tucked Judge Bennett's card under my pillow. The bank said large transfers require a longer verification period. I repeated my prepared line. Daniel stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly walked into the room, his eyes scanning everything. What have you been up to lately? You're never around. My gaze involuntarily flickered to the nightstand where the documents from the law firm lay. Daniel followed my gaze and strode over. Dad, Grandma's hiding something. Ethan's shriek came from downstairs. Mom fell. Daniel's face changed and he spun around and rushed downstairs. I let out a long breath, quickly hid the files and followed him down. In the kitchen, Cassandra was sitting on the floor rubbing her ankle while Ethan stood by smirking. Seeing us, Cassandra immediately put on a pained expression. Honey, I twisted my ankle. This diverted Daniel's attention, and he didn't bring up the donation again that night. But before going to sleep, I heard hushed arguments from their bedroom. That old woman has been acting strange lately. We can't let that money slip away. We have to keep a close eye on her. I gently closed my door, took out Judge Bennett's card from under my pillow, and looked at it for a long, long time. The hallway of the city hospital's psychiatric department was much quieter than the other departments. I sat on a bench clutching my registration slip as nurses led patients in and out of consultation rooms. Number 17, Margaret Thompson. A gentle electronic voice called my name. Inside the room, a female doctor in her early 40s smiled and invited me to sit down. Mrs. Thompson, what brings you to the psychiatric department? I took a deep breath. Doctor, I'd like to inquire about the long-term effects of verbal abuse and emotional neglect from family members on the elderly. The doctor's expression immediately became focused. She gently put down her pen. Could you tell me more about your situation? An hour later, I left the consultation room with an elderly psychological health assessment report and a few prescriptions. The doctor's words echoed in my ears. Mrs. Thompson, you have clear symptoms of anxiety and depression. This is directly related to the family environment you've described. I suggest you keep all your medical records. They can be used as evidence if necessary. There was an electronics store near the hospital entrance. I hesitated at the door for a few minutes before finally going in. Excuse me, do you have any small, hard-to-detect cameras? I asked the young man behind the counter in a low voice. He gave me a surprised look, then brought out several models. This pinhole camera can be hidden in a picture frame or a clock with remote monitoring on your phone. This one looks like a regular phone charger. I eventually chose a miniature recording pen that could be clipped to my clothing and a set of surveillance cameras disguised as smoke detectors. The young man helped me set them up and taught me how to view the footage on my phone. He suddenly called out as I was leaving. Do you need help? I shook my head and forced a smile. I'm just trying to document my life. Back home, while they were out, I carefully installed the cameras in the corner of the living room and on the dining room chandelier. I kept the recording pen with me. With the press of a button, it could record continuously for 8 hours. After installing the last device, I sat in the study, opened my new laptop, and tested the surveillance feed. The screen clearly showed every corner of the living room. A strange feeling washed over me. In my own home, I had to act like a thief, secretly installing surveillance cameras. That evening, Cassandra wrinkled her nose as soon as she walked in. What's that smell? My heart leaped. Oh, I lit some sandalwood incense. I heard it helps with relaxation. She looked around suspiciously, her gaze sweeping over the new smoke detector, but she said nothing. During dinner, I quietly pressed the button on the recording pen in my pocket. Mom, what's the deal with the donation? Daniel put down his chopsticks, his tone blunt. The school called to follow up again today. I slowly chewed my food. Buying time. I'll go to the bank in person tomorrow to check on it. Did you change your mind? Cassandra suddenly interjected, her voice sharp. You were the one who offered to pay for it in the first place. Ethan mimicked my tone. Ethan needs to go to the best school, and now you're being a cheapskate. The hand holding my chopsticks trembled slightly, but the recording pen in my pocket gave me strength. I just want to confirm if this money is paid. Is Ethan guaranteed a spot in the honors class? Of course, Cassandra said smugly. My dad is friends with the vice principal. Once the money is there, the spot is ours. Mom, you don't need to worry about all this. Daniel cut in. Just transfer the money to me and I'll handle it. I nodded without saying a word, but I mentally filed away this crucial piece of information. The next day, I went to the bank, but not to make a transfer. I had an appointment with my personal client manager, Ryan, to review all my accounts. Mrs. Thompson, you have $650,000 in fixed deposits and $210,000 in your checking account, Ryan said, pointing at the screen. And then there's that $30,000 transfer you asked to cancel. I thought for a moment. Ryan, if I wanted to set up a dedicated education fund, one for a specific purpose, is that possible? Of course. Ryan nodded. We can set up a trust account with a designated beneficiary and specific conditions for use. For example, it can only be used for tuition payments or only after certain academic standards are met. 2 hours later, I walked out of the bank with a letter of intent to establish an educational trust fund. The $30,000 had been transferred to a special account accessible for Ethan's education only when he met the conditions I had set. On the way home, I took a detour to the park William used to love. The spring sun was warm on my skin. I sat on a bench watching the light dance on the lake. Mrs. Thompson, what a coincidence. I looked up to see Judge Bennett standing before me, a book in his hand. Judge Bennett, I said, standing up, feeling a bit flustered. He smiled and sat down beside me. Just out for a walk. We started talking from the weather to new movies, and eventually the conversation turned back to my situation. In the sunlight of the park, I found I could speak more openly about my pain, even about the slap. After listening, Judge Bennett's face grew serious. Mrs. Thompson, the evidence you're collecting is important, but what's more important is protecting yourself. If they find out what you're doing, I understand. I nodded. Here's my friend Michelle's number, he said, writing a number on the back of his card. She's a lawyer who specializes in family law and elder rights. You can call her if you need to. As we parted, Judge Bennett hesitated, then added, Mrs. Thompson, in some family conflicts, the law can only solve the surface problems. What truly needs mending are the invisible cracks. I gave a bitter smile. Some cracks, I feared, could no longer be mended. When I got home, I found Cassandra wasn't there. Daniel said she had gone shopping with friends. Ethan was upstairs playing video games, the deafening sound effects audible through the floor. Mom, about the donation. Daniel brought up the topic again. I interrupted him. Daniel, do you remember when you were in elementary school? You had a fever of 102 degrees and I carried you to the hospital. He was taken aback. Why bring that up all of a sudden? It was pouring rain and there were no taxis on the road, I continued, watching his reaction. I fell and scraped my knee, but I still got you to the hospital safely. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Mom, what's the point of all this? I just want to know, I asked softly, why you haven't once asked me how I got the bruise on my face. His expression changed. You said you bumped into the door. I shook my head, turned, and went upstairs, leaving him standing alone in the living room. That night, I lay in bed reviewing the surveillance footage on my phone. In the video, Cassandra was on the phone in the living room. The old lady has been acting mysterious lately. I suspect she's transferring assets. We need to watch her closely. My dad said that house is worth at least $1 million. I turned off the video and opened a recording file. Daniel and Cassandra's conversation was crystal clear. If my mom tries to pull any tricks, we'll get a doctor to certify that she has dementia. Then I'll be in control of all the assets. I took off my reading glasses and rubbed my tired eyes. Outside, a full moon hung in the sky, its cold light shining down on this no longer warm home. In the senior center classroom, about 20 silver-haired students were listening intently. Today's speaker was Barbara Morgan, the director of the Senior Services Center, and the topic was how seniors can protect their legal rights. Many of our senior friends think that writing a will is bad luck, Barbara said gently. But in reality, a clear will can prevent many family disputes after you're gone. I sat in the front row, taking careful notes. Ever since meeting Judge Bennett, I had started attending these legal lectures regularly. Today I came an hour early just to get a good seat. After the lecture, I stayed to consult with Barbara. Director Morgan, if I want to amend my will, what's the procedure? She took my hand warmly. Mrs. Thompson, first you need to have a clear list of your assets. And then after a half-hour in-depth conversation, Barbara gave me a sample will and an asset inventory form. Mrs. Thompson. She hesitated. If you are experiencing domestic violence, our center can provide a temporary shelter. I thanked her for her kindness, but didn't pursue the topic. Some sense of shame still lingers, even in this enlightened age. From the senior center, I went straight to Stephen Park's law firm. This time, I brought all the evidence I had collected, medical records, surveillance videos, audio recordings, and transfer receipts. After reviewing all the materials, Stephen's face was terrifyingly grim. Mrs. Thompson, this is more than enough to prove you have been subjected to long-term domestic violence and financial exploitation. Under the Violence Against Women Act, you can apply for a protection order. I want to amend my will first, I said. Stephen nodded and took out a standard form. How do you wish to distribute your assets? I had already thought it through. 80% of the house and my savings will be donated to the city's education foundation to establish the Margaret Thompson Teachers Award Fund. The remaining 20% will go to Daniel, but with conditions. He must attend family education courses, and Ethan must give me a written apology. Stephen recorded my requests, offering legal advice along the way. 2 hours later, a new draft of the will was complete, waiting only for official signing and notarization. Mrs. Thompson, Stephen said as he saw me out. Are you really determined to go this far? Not give Daniel another chance? I looked out at the bright sunshine. It is precisely to give him a real chance to change that I must do this. On the way home, I detoured to William's grave. The photo on the headstone had faded a bit, but his gentle smile was still as clear as ever. I gently wiped the stone, reporting on my recent life as I always did. William, I might have to make some decisions that will make Daniel hate me for the rest of his life. I whispered. But I remember you always said that true love is not about indulgence, but about having the courage to set boundaries. A breeze rustled through the pine trees in the cemetery, as if in response. When I got home, the atmosphere was unusually tense. Daniel sat in the living room with a dark expression while Cassandra was in the kitchen clattering pots and pans angrily. Mom, you're finally back. Daniel stood up, his voice suppressing his fury. The school officially notified us today that the donation was cancelled. I calmly put down my bag. I know. You know, Daniel's voice suddenly rose. Didn't you say the bank was processing it? What on earth is going on? I walked to the sofa and sat down, motioning for him to sit as well. Daniel, we need to talk. Talk about what? Cassandra rushed over, her voice shrill. Where did you put the money? Do you know that if Ethan can't get into that prep school, his life is over? I took a deep breath. First, the money is still there. It's just been moved to an educational trust fund. As long as Ethan meets the basic academic requirements, his tuition will be paid automatically. What fund? Who told you to do that? Daniel stared at me in disbelief. Second, I continued. My voice surprisingly calm about the house. I plan to the house. Cassandra shrieked. What are you planning to do? I finally said the words I had been preparing for days. I plan to have you move out. The living room fell deathly silent. Daniel's face turned beet red while Cassandra's went pale. What did you say? Daniel's voice trembled. I said, I repeated clearly. I am asking the three of you to move out of my house. Are you crazy? Cassandra exploded. This is our home. We've lived here for 12 years. Excuse me. The deed is in my name. I cut her off. And in these 12 years, you haven't paid a single dollar in rent. Daniel shot to his feet. Mom, did someone put you up to this? Was it Patricia or that judge you've been seeing? I shook my head. Daniel, do you remember what happened on Ethan's birthday last month? He froze, his eyes darting away. What? What happened? He slapped me, I said flatly. And you, my son, laughed and said he was just playing around. Daniel's face changed. Mom, that was just and I went on, Cassandra said. Go on, hit him back. I dare you. I looked straight into my son's eyes. Daniel, do you know what I was thinking at that moment? He was speechless. I was thinking, I said softly. When did the son I raised with so much love and hardship become such a cold, indifferent stranger? Cassandra suddenly lunged forward. You, old woman, don't push it. We take care of you, feed you, and this is how you repay us. Take care of me. I couldn't help but laugh. Cassandra, in the past 6 months, have you cooked a single meal, washed a single dish? You even throw your own underwear in with my laundry for me to wash. So what? She retorted sharply. What's wrong with an old person doing some chores? You're home all day with nothing to do. Enough. Daniel suddenly roared, cutting her off. He turned to me, his voice low and dangerous. Mom, what do you really want? Money. The house. Are you getting senile? I stood up and walked to the study. Come with me. I have something to show you. In the study, I opened my laptop and played a surveillance video. The screen clearly showed the scene of Ethan slapping me and the reactions of both his parents. This is Daniel's voice caught in his throat. This is just the beginning, I said. I clicked open a folder neatly organized with all kinds of evidence. Medical records, transfer receipts, audio files. Cassandra's face turned ashen. You've been spying on us. Protecting myself, I corrected her. Just like you were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. Daniel looked at me, shocked. How did you know? That's not important, I said, closing the laptop. What's important is that I've made my decision. I'm giving you 3 months to find a new place to live. As for Ethan's tuition, as long as he ranks in the top 50% of his grade, the fund will automatically pay it. You can't do this, Cassandra cried hysterically. You're going to ruin our whole family. I shook my head. No, I'm giving you a chance to start over. Daniel suddenly grabbed the desk lamp and smashed it against the wall. With a loud crash, glass shards flew everywhere. I hate you. He roared like a wounded animal. I will never forgive you. He stormed out of the study, slamming the door behind him. Cassandra shot me a venomous glare and ran out after him. I slowly knelt down, picking up the pieces of broken glass one by one. A shard cut my finger and a bead of blood welled up, but I barely felt the pain. Upstairs, I could hear fierce arguments and the sound of things being thrown. I sat at William's desk, opened the drawer, and took out his picture. William, I whispered, am I doing the right thing? In the photo, he was still smiling, his gaze gentle and firm. I could almost hear him say, Margaret, you finally learned to love yourself. That night, I received a call from Patricia. Margaret. Her voice was full of worry. Daniel just called me. He said, you've been acting erratically and asked if I'd noticed. He was trying to see if I knew what you were planning. I gripped the phone, realizing the battle had only just begun. The morning sun streamed through the gap in the curtains. I opened my eyes and found my pillow was damp. Last night's dream was still vivid. William had been standing by my bed, gently stroking my hair, saying, don't be afraid. I'm here. Downstairs, I heard the clatter of pots and pans, which was highly unusual. I looked at the clock. It was only 6:30 in the morning. Since our confrontation, this was the first time Cassandra had woken up early to make breakfast. I got dressed, clipped the recording pen to the collar of my undershirt, and pressed the switch. As I went downstairs, the smell of something burning hit me. Mom, you're up. Daniel greeted me. An uncharacteristic and unnatural smile on his face. Cassandra made you some oatmeal. Cassandra brought out a bowl of dark, lumpy porridge from the kitchen, forcing a smile. Mom, I'm not a great cook. I hope it's okay. I took the bowl and set it on the table. Just say what you have to say. Daniel wrung his hands. Mom, I was too impulsive yesterday. Don't take it to heart. Let's talk about the house again. Yes, Mom. Cassandra chimed in. You'd be so lonely living in such a big house by yourself. If we move out, who will take care of you? I watched their performance silently, then noticed Ethan was missing. Where's Ethan? Oh, he's staying at a friend's house, Daniel said, his eyes shifting. Mom, look. How about this? We'll handle the donation thing your way, but please let us keep the house. It's the only home we have. I shook my head. Daniel, do you know how much this house is worth? He paused. Maybe $500,000 or $600,000. $830,000. I said calmly. I just had it appraised last week. Cassandra gasped, her eyes lighting up. Mom. Daniel's voice suddenly broke. Do you remember when I was little? We lived in that tiny apartment and it was so cold in the winter you'd hold my feet in your arms to warm them up. A sharp pain pierced my heart. Of course, I remembered those memories. Every single detail was seared into my mind. But it was precisely because I remembered the warmth of the past that I couldn't tolerate the coldness of the present. I remember, I said softly. And that's why I have to do this. Cassandra's expression suddenly changed. Old woman, don't be ungrateful. We're begging you and you're still putting on airs. Cassandra, Daniel snapped at her, but it was too late. I stood up. I'm going to the senior center. I won't be back for lunch. Walking out of the house, I let out a long breath. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Patricia. Margaret, Daniel is asking around about the diagnostic process for dementia. Be careful. I replied with a thank you and went straight to Stephen's law firm. Mrs. Thompson, Stephen said, his face grim after reviewing my latest recordings and text messages. This is more serious than I thought. They might be preparing to file a petition to have you declared legally incompetent. I clutched my teacup. What should I do? We strike first, Stephen said decisively. We can file a property rights lawsuit to confirm your full ownership of the house. At the same time, we'll file for a temporary restraining order to prevent them from transferring any of your assets. 2 hours later, I walked out of the law firm with a civil complaint and a request for a restraining order. The sun was glaring. I put on my sunglasses and suddenly saw a familiar figure across the street, Cassandra's father, Richard Chen, getting out of a black car with a young man in a suit. I quickly ducked into a nearby pharmacy and watched through the window as they entered the same building as the law firm. My heart sank. The Chens had clearly hired their own lawyer. The senior center had a crafts class today, but I was in no mood for it. I sat on a bench on the campus and called Judge Bennett. Judge, it's Margaret Thompson. Half an hour later, we met at a nearby tea house. Judge Bennett listened to my story, his brow furrowed. Mrs. Thompson, you need to prepare yourself. This family dispute could escalate into a public legal battle. I'm prepared, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Judge Bennett handed me a slip of paper. This is my friend Barbara Morgan's number. She's the director of the City Senior Services Center. If things get urgent, you can call her for help. On my way home, my phone vibrated incessantly. Daniel had left over a dozen missed calls, finally sending a text. Mom, the school called and said, Ethan's admission has been revoked. What on earth did you do? I didn't reply. The donation was just the beginning. The real shock was yet to come. I pushed open the door to a thick cloud of cigarette smoke. In the living room, Richard Chen was sitting in the main armchair, puffing away. Daniel and Cassandra stood on either side, their faces grim. Ethan was there too, head down, playing on his phone, not even looking up when I came in. Well, if it isn't my dear-in-law, Richard Chen said with a smirk. We were just waiting for you. I put down my bag and asked calmly, what's going on? Richard Chen stubbed out his cigarette. I hear you're trying to kick my daughter, son-in-law, and grandson out of the house. It's my house, I said, looking him straight in the eye. Your house. Richard Chen sneered. What does an old woman like you need with so much property? Daniel is your only son. It'll all be his eventually. What's the point of all this drama now? Are you going senile? I turned to Daniel. Is that what you think, too? Daniel avoided my gaze. Mom, Mr. Chen is here to mediate. Don't be so stubborn. Mediate. I laughed. Mediating with a lawyer in tow. Richard Chen's face changed. How did you know? He caught himself. Did you follow us? This is my neighborhood. I was just taking a walk and happened to see you, I said, sitting down on the sofa. Mr. Chen, this is our family matter. Please don't interfere. Family matter. Richard Chen slammed his hand on the table. You messing with my daughter is my business. Let me tell you, Margaret, don't think you can do whatever you want just because you're old. I have connections in this city. I calmly took the court's notice of acceptance from my bag. I just got this today. The court has accepted my property rights lawsuit. Until a verdict is reached, no one can transfer my assets. Daniel snatched the document and after a quick scan, his face went pale. Mom, you're actually suing us? I'm not suing you. I corrected him. I'm confirming my legal rights. Richard Chen grabbed the paper, glanced at it, and then laughed. Fine. You want to play legal games? So be it. He turned to the young man beside him. Alex, tomorrow, file a petition to have her declared incompetent. We'll see how she fights a lawsuit. Then I stood up. I'm asking you to leave my living room. If you don't, I'll have to call the police. The police? Cassandra shrieked. Go ahead. Let the police see how you abuse your grandson and bully your own son. I walked to the telephone and picked up the receiver. Seeing this, Richard Chen stood up with a snort. Fine, we'll see about this. Daniel, Cassandra, pack your things. You're coming to live with me. Half an hour later, they left with several large suitcases. As he was leaving, Ethan made a face at me. Old hag. The moment the door closed, my legs gave out and I sank to the floor. In the empty house, only the sound of my suppressed sobs remained. The morning sun shone on the dining table as I ate a simple breakfast alone, a slice of toast and a fried egg. It had been 3 days. The house was so quiet I could hear the ticking of the clock. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, may I speak to Mrs. Margaret Thompson? A young woman asked. This is she. Hello, I'm Jennifer Kim, a reporter with the City Evening News. I'd like to interview you about the issue of elder abuse in families. My heart tightened. How did you find out about my situation? Oh, it was Director Barbara Morgan from the Senior Services Center who recommended you, she said. She thought you might be willing to share your story. I relaxed. Barbara was someone Judge Bennett had recommended. She should be trustworthy. I can, but I wish to remain anonymous. No problem. We can use a pseudonym. After arranging to meet in the park that afternoon, I called Barbara to confirm. Mrs. Thompson, Barbara's voice was warm and firm. Your case is very typical. Our center is currently running a campaign against elder abuse, and your experience can help many others. After hanging up, I started to organize my thoughts. The doorbell rang suddenly. Through the peephole, I saw it was Mrs. Henderson from the neighborhood committee. Mrs. Thompson, Mrs. Henderson said with a troubled expression. Some residents have complained about frequent arguments coming from your house. I sneered. That would be Daniel and Cassandra's doing, wouldn't it? They moved out 3 days ago. What arguments could there be? No. They're saying you've been mentally unstable. Mrs. Henderson hesitated. And they've been telling people in the neighborhood that you're kicking them out for no reason. I invited her in and showed her the court documents and surveillance footage. Her expression changed from embarrassed to shocked and finally to angry. This is outrageous, she exclaimed, slapping the table. Mrs. Thompson, don't worry. The neighborhood committee will definitely set the record straight for you. The interview that afternoon went smoothly. The reporter, Jennifer, diligently recorded my experience, paying special attention to the slap and the subsequent legal actions. Mrs. Thompson, she said as she was leaving, this report will generate a lot of discussion. Please be prepared. The next morning, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Daniel alone. His eyes were red and swollen as if he had been crying. Mom. His voice was hoarse. Can we talk? I let him in but kept the recording pen on. Mom, I was wrong. He started sobbing as soon as he sat down. I shouldn't have treated you like that. I was looking at the old photo albums you gave me last night, and I remembered when I was a kid. I watched him quietly, waiting for what would come next. I've decided to stand with you, Daniel said, wiping his tears. Cassandra and her dad have gone too far. They're really preparing to file to have you declared incompetent. My heart sank. Although I had expected it, hearing it confirmed, still felt like being plunged into ice water. How do you know? I overheard them talking last night, Daniel said, looking down. Her dad found a doctor to write a fake certificate. I can't help them hurt you anymore. I studied my son's face, trying to discern if this was genuine remorse or another trick. William had once said before he passed that Daniel wasn't a bad person at his core, just easily swayed. Daniel, if you truly feel you were wrong, then do something for me. Anything? He asked eagerly. Go talk to Director Barbara Morgan. Tell her everything you know. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Okay. As I saw him to the door, he suddenly turned and hugged me. Mom, I'm so sorry. The hug was so tight. It felt like we had gone back to his childhood. That afternoon, I received a call from Barbara. Mrs. Thompson, Daniel was here. He provided a lot of important information. We've already contacted the police and are preparing to open an investigation. 3 days later, the City Evening News published a front-page story titled The Pain of Our Elders, an in-depth investigation into domestic violence. Although it used a pseudonym, anyone who knew me could tell who it was about. My phone blew up with calls of concern and inquiry. The most unexpected call came from the old principal of the prep school. Mrs. Thompson, I saw the report. That boy is your grandson, isn't he? I tacitly agreed. We are shocked, the principal said. We will have to reconsider the admission of a child from a family with such an upbringing. That same day, the court's restraining order was issued, prohibiting anyone from transferring or hiding my assets, including the house. That evening, Judge Bennett called. Mrs. Thompson, are you free tomorrow? A legal aid team would like to meet with you. The next day at the law firm, I met the professional team Judge Bennett had assembled. Lawyers, a psychologist, and a social worker. They had decided to take my case pro bono. Mrs. Thompson, said the lead lawyer, Nathan Cooper, we have ample evidence to prove that you are fully competent. Furthermore, the other party is suspected of perjury and fraud. On the way home, I bought an evening paper. On the second page was a small news item. Local businessmen investigated for allegedly forging medical certificates. Although no names were mentioned, it was clearly about Richard Chen. I opened my door to the familiar smell of cooking. On the dining table were braised fish, sweet and sour pork ribs, and stir-fried vegetables, all of Daniel's childhood favorites. Mom. Daniel came out of the kitchen wearing my old apron. I wanted to cook a meal for you. My nose tingled and I almost cried. It had been years since I'd seen such a scene. We ate in silence, neither of us mentioning the lawsuit or the conflict. After dinner, Daniel insisted on washing the dishes, then took a stack of papers from his bag. Mom, this is a list of all the money I've taken from you over the years. I'll pay you back. Slowly, I looked through the detailed accounts, surprised by his earnestness. Daniel, I asked softly, what about Cassandra and Ethan? His shoulders tensed. They're at her dad's place, he paused. Mom, I want a divorce. I looked at him stunned. I've done a lot of thinking. His voice cracked. I've been so weak, always letting them lead me by the nose. I couldn't even protect my own mother. That night, my son and I sat on the balcony and talked until late. Daniel told me how Cassandra had gradually controlled him, how Richard Chen had manipulated everything from behind the scenes. And I told him why I had to take such drastic measures. Mom, I understand now, Daniel said, his eyes red. Sometimes tough love is the only way. The next day, the court summons arrived. Richard Chen had indeed filed to have me declared incompetent. But on the same day, the police issued a notice that they were opening a case against Richard Chen for document forgery. Public opinion began to turn. In the neighborhood, the same neighbors who had pointed fingers at me now looked at me with sympathy and admiration. But the biggest surprise came a week later when Cassandra showed up at my door alone, her attitude having done a 180 degrees turn. Mom, she said, her eyes red and her voice trembling. I was wrong. Please, I'm begging you. Let my father go. It turned out the police investigation was closing in and more problems had been uncovered in Richard Chen's business. He was facing criminal charges. Cassandra, I said calmly. I never wanted revenge on anyone. I was just protecting myself. She suddenly fell to her knees. Mom, please drop the lawsuit. I'll agree to the divorce. I won't take anything. Just please don't let my dad go to jail. I helped her up. I won't drop the lawsuit, but I can write a letter of leniency, explaining that your father acted foolishly in the heat of the moment. She left in tears. Daniel stood by the window, watching his wife's retreating figure with a complicated expression. Do you regret it? I asked. He shook his head. No, I just feel it's tragic. How did we become like this? It was the Third Circuit courtroom of the Intermediate Court, solemn and imposing. I sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by Nathan Cooper and his team. Across from us, at the defendant's table, Richard Chen sat with his lawyer, his face grim. Daniel, as a third party, sat in the middle, belonging to neither side. The gallery was packed. Reporters, staff from the Senior Services Center, neighbors, and even some of my students from years ago. All rise. This court is now in session, the judge announced, banging the gavel. The matter before the court is the petition to declare a natural person legally incompetent. Richard Chen's lawyer spoke first. Your Honor, my client has ample evidence to prove that the respondent, Margaret Thompson, has been exhibiting abnormal behavior recently, suspected to be the early stages of dementia. He presented a medical certificate and several witness statements from neighbors claiming I had memory loss and emotional instability. When it was our turn, Nathan Cooper rose calmly. Your Honor, we first question the authenticity of this medical certificate. In fact, the doctor who issued it is currently under police investigation for suspicion of forging medical documents. The judge's brow furrowed. Do you have proof? Nathan presented the police case notice and my own official hospital physical exam report. On the contrary, we have a report from City General Hospital confirming that Mrs. Margaret Thompson is fully mentally competent. Next, Nathan played the surveillance video of Ethan slapping me and the audio recording of Cassandra saying, "I dare you." A gasp went through the gallery. This evidence shows Nathan's voice boomed that Mrs. Thompson was acting in lawful self-defense after suffering from domestic violence. The petitioner, in an attempt to seize her property, has maliciously accused a clear-minded and intelligent elderly woman. Richard Chen's lawyer jumped up to object. This is irrelevant to the case. On the contrary, it is entirely relevant, Nathan retorted. The petitioner is attempting to achieve an illegal goal by having Mrs. Thompson declared incompetent. The judge nodded. Objection overruled. The plaintiff may continue. Nathan then presented my financial records from over the years, my certificates of completion from classes at the Senior Center, and even a video of me speaking at a community legal lecture. Your Honor, this is a clear-thinking, fully competent senior citizen. In fact, Mrs. Thompson knows more about the law and her rights than many younger people. Finally, Nathan called his star witness, Judge Bennett. As a retired judge, I can attest that Mrs. Margaret Thompson is fully mentally competent, Judge Bennett said firmly. On the contrary, I believe this case involves malicious prosecution and abuse of the judicial process. The court debate lasted for 3 hours. During the recess, Richard Chen stormed out of the courtroom where reporters swarmed him. Mr. Chen, do you admit to forging the medical certificate? Were you attempting to seize your mother-in-law's assets? He pushed past them and fled. Daniel remained in his seat, his expression unreadable. When the court resumed in the afternoon, the judge delivered the verdict on the spot. After careful review, this court finds that the respondent, Margaret Thompson, is fully competent. The petitioner, Richard Chen's application lacks factual and legal basis and is hereby dismissed. Applause erupted from the gallery. The judge banged his gavel for order, then added, "This court notes that this case may involve criminal offenses, and the relevant materials will be transferred to the public security organs for investigation." Walking out of the courtroom, I was met with a barrage of cameras and microphones. Mrs. Thompson, how do you feel about the victory? Will you press charges against Richard Chen? I answered calmly. The law has cleared my name. As for the rest, I will leave it to the judicial system. That night, my house was lively for the first time in a long time. Judge Bennett, Barbara Morgan, Patricia, and Nathan Cooper all came over. Daniel personally cooked a table full of food. To Margaret, Barbara said, raising her glass, "You've made history. This is the first case in our city where senior has successfully fought back against a false competency claim." Everyone chatted and drank merrily. Only Daniel seemed preoccupied. After the guests left, he quietly cleaned up. Worried about Cassandra and Ethan? I asked. He nodded. After Ethan was rejected by the school, Cassandra sent him to live with her parents out of state. Do you want to save your marriage? I asked directly. He shook his head. No, I'm just worried about Ethan. He became this way. I'm responsible. I patted my son's shoulder. Blood is thicker than water. When the dust settles, you can go see him. The next day, the City Evening News ran a front-page story about my victory with the headline, "Law Vindicates Wise Elder." The paper also published an editorial calling for more social attention to the rights of the elderly. A week later, the Public Security Bureau announced that Richard Chen had been criminally detained on suspicion of forging official documents. Cassandra completely broke down and proactively sought out Daniel to sign the divorce papers. But the most surprising thing was that the old principal of the prep school came to my door in person. "Mrs. Thompson," he said sincerely, "we have reconsidered your grandson's admission. Although his family upbringing has issues, the child himself is innocent." I shook my head. "Principal, thank you for your kindness. But Ethan first needs to learn to respect others, especially his elders." After seeing the principal out, Daniel walked over, his eyes red. "Mom, thank you for still thinking of Ethan." I sighed. He is my grandson after all. As media coverage deepened, my story sparked a wide public discussion. A television station invited me for an interview. The Senior Services Center hired me as a consultant, and someone even suggested I run for city council representative, but I declined them all. What I really wanted to do was to start a non-profit organization to help abused elderly people. "Mom," Daniel said one day, "I want to move back in to be with you. Just the two of us." I looked at his hopeful eyes and gently shook my head. "Daniel, you need to have your own life. I'll keep the house. You can come visit me anytime." He was disappointed but understood. The next day, he rented a small apartment nearby and began to learn to live independently. Meanwhile, my non-profit was coming along smoothly. Judge Bennett volunteered to be the legal advisor. Barbara provided venue support, and even Nathan Cooper offered pro bono services. While preparing the materials, I came across an old photo of William. He was in his judge's uniform, handsome and upright. On the back, he had written a line, "With reverence for the law, one can win the hearts of the people." I gently traced the words as if touching his very soul. "William," I whispered, "I did it." The logo for the City Hospital Psychology Department is an abstract green tree, its branches reaching upward, symbolizing growth and hope. I stood in the waiting area, looking at this logo with mixed feelings. "Mrs. Thompson, you can go in now," a nurse called kindly. In the consultation room, besides the familiar Dr. Martinez, there was a middle-aged man and a young boy. The boy had his back to the door, but I recognized him instantly. It was Ethan. "Grandma," he turned around and called out softly. I stood frozen. It had only been 3 months, but he had grown taller. The hostility in his face was gone, replaced by a touch of unease. "Mrs. Thompson," Dr. Martinez stood to greet me. "This is Ethan's therapist, Dr. Sullivan. They were hoping you would participate in his treatment process." I sat down and listened. As Dr. Sullivan explained, Ethan has shown significant aggressive behaviors and emotional cognitive impairment. "We believe this is directly related to his family environment." Ethan kept his head down, fidgeting with his fingers. I noticed a faint scar on his wrist. "What's this?" I couldn't help but ask. "Self-harm behavior," Dr. Sullivan said in a low voice. After the divorce, Cassandra was emotionally unstable and often beat the child. One time my heart tightened as I looked at Ethan. He kept his head down, but I saw a tear fall onto his knee. "Ethan," I called his name softly. "Look up at Grandma." He slowly raised his head, his eyes red and swollen. In that moment, I didn't see the rebellious teenager who had hit me, but a hurt child who needed love. "Does it hurt?" I asked, pointing to his wrist. He shook his head, then nodded and suddenly threw himself into my arms, sobbing. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have hit you. I really regret it." I held him close, patting his back, just as I had comforted Daniel all those years ago. In that moment, all resentment vanished. After the session, I walked out of the hospital, holding Ethan's hand. The sun was bright, shining down on us. "Grandma," he asked in a small voice, "can I still go to the prep school?" I knelt down to his level. "Ethan, the school isn't what's important. What's important is the kind of person you become. Do you understand?" He thought for a moment and nodded. I want to be like Dad. I was a little surprised. Your dad? Dad is better now, he said seriously. He visits me every day and is learning to cook. He said he wants to start over. My eyes welled up, so Daniel was really changing. Then how about Grandma asks the school for you? His eyes lit up and he nodded vigorously. On the way home, my phone rang. It was Cassandra. Mom, her voice was, you met on a bench in the community garden. She looked much more haggard than she had 3 months ago, with fine lines at the corners of her eyes, her once perfectly styled hair tied back carelessly. Mom. She got straight to the point. My dad, he might be sentenced to prison. I need to find a job, but no one will hire me. She choked up. I know I have no right to ask you, but can you watch Ethan for me? Just during the day. I looked at her. Cassandra, do you know why I was so insistent on fighting that lawsuit? She shook her head. It wasn't for the money or for revenge, I said softly. It was to make you all understand that elderly people are human beings with dignity and rights. She lowered her head, tears dripping onto her hands. I can take care of Ethan, I continued. But not for you. For him. She cried even harder. Mom, I really know I was wrong. It's good that you know you were wrong, I said, handing her a tissue. You're only in your 30s. You have a long life ahead of you. Get back up from where you fell. The next day, I contacted the old principal of the prep school. After several conversations, the school agreed to give Ethan a probationary admission on the condition that he continue to receive psychological counseling and maintain good behavior. When Daniel found out, he was too emotional to speak. He just held me tight, crying like a child. Mom, thank you. I patted his back. There. A grown man shouldn't cry. From now on, just focus on raising your child well. That's more important than anything. With Ethan starting school, my life took on a new rhythm. 3 days a week, I would take him to school and pick him up, listening to him talk about his day. His emotional state gradually stabilized, and his grades began to improve. Cassandra found a job as a cashier at a supermarket. It was hard work, but she said she felt fulfilled. Sometimes on weekends, she would come to see Ethan, and the 3 of us could even have a meal together. As for Daniel, he found a job at a construction company, starting from the bottom. Every evening, no matter how tired he was, he would stop by my place for a while, sometimes with fruit, sometimes just to chat. One rainy evening, Daniel ran in, soaked to the bone, holding a cake box. Mom, happy birthday, he said excitedly. I was stunned. I had completely forgotten it was my birthday. The cake said, Happy New Life, Mom. Daniel explained. Today is the beginning of your new life, isn't it? My hand trembled as I cut the cake. It was true. What had I lost in this storm? And what had I gained? I had lost a false sense of family and material dependence, but I had gained true dignity and my son's awakening. A month later, the Silver Guardian non-profit organization was officially launched. Many media outlets and guests attended the opening ceremony. As the founder, I gave a speech. The elderly are not a burden on their families, but a treasure to society. What we need is not pity, but respect and equality. The applause was thunderous. I saw Daniel and Ethan sitting in the front row, looking at me with pride. Cassandra was there too, standing in a corner, tears glistening in her eyes. After the event, Judge Bennett quietly slipped me a letter. Mrs. Thompson, this is from William. I opened the envelope, shocked. Inside was William's familiar handwriting. Margaret, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. Don't be sad. I am just watching over you in a different way. Remember, you are stronger than you think. No matter what happens, live your life bravely. My tears soaked the letter. William had known all along. He knew what I would face, and he knew I would get through it. On the way home, Daniel held Ethan's hand, and Ethan held mine. The setting sun stretched our shadows long behind us, the 3 shadows gradually merging into one. Grandma, Ethan said suddenly, when I grow up, I want to be like you and help people. I knelt and kissed his forehead. You will do even better than Grandma. Spring arrived and the cherry blossoms in the neighborhood were in full bloom, their pink and white petals dancing in the wind, some landing on the Silver Guardian sign. In the office, the volunteers and I were organizing case files. In the 3 months since we opened, we had helped 27 abused elderly individuals, 5 of whom had proceeded to legal action. Mrs. Thompson, a young volunteer, Tyler, ran in excitedly. The TV station wants to interview you for a special feature on senior citizens' rights. I smiled and shook my head. Let Director Morgan go. She's more eloquent. No way, Barbara said, walking in just then. You're the heart and soul of our organization. It has to be you. As we were laughing, Daniel pushed open the door, holding a stack of documents. Mom, it's done. It was the paperwork for the house title transfer. I had decided to formally transfer the house to Daniel and Ethan while retaining the right of residence. This way, their needs were met and my rights were protected. Thank you, Mom, Daniel said, carefully putting the documents away. By the way, Ethan has a parent-teacher conference next week. Can you come? Of course, I agreed readily. On the day of the conference, the school auditorium was packed. Ethan was asked to speak as the most improved student. The applause was unending. I sat in the parents section looking at my confident, bright grandson on stage, barely recognizing the boy who had once hit me, Mrs. Thompson. A familiar voice sounded behind me. I turned to see Cassandra. She was wearing a smart suit, her hair neatly tied up, looking much more put together. You came alone? She asked a bit timidly. Daniel had something come up at work. I shifted over. Sit here. She sat down looking flattered. When Ethan said on stage, I especially want to thank my grandma and my mom. Both our eyes welled up. After the meeting, Cassandra gathered her courage and asked me, Mom, can I buy you a cup of coffee? In the coffee shop, she told me she had been promoted to department supervisor at the supermarket. She also shyly mentioned that a divorced colleague, a middle school teacher, was pursuing her. He's a nice man, she said, stirring her coffee. But I wanted to ask for your opinion first. I was taken aback. The once arrogant and domineering daughter-in-law was now asking for my advice. As long as you like him and he's good to you, I have no objection, I said gently. Her eyes lit up. Then, can I bring him to meet you? Of course, I nodded. Walking out of the coffee shop. The sun was perfect. Cassandra hesitated for a moment, then suddenly hugged me. Mom, thank you. The hug felt so natural, as if the years of resentment had never existed. That weekend, my house was full of life. Daniel cooked, Ethan helped out. Cassandra brought her new boyfriend over, and even Judge Bennett and Patricia came. The table was laden with food and filled with laughter. To Margaret, Judge Bennett raised his glass, to your new life. We all clinked glasses. Ethan clamored for juice and Daniel poured him a glass with a smile. Cassandra and her new boyfriend exchanged a look, their eyes full of sweetness. Watching this scene, I suddenly thought of William. If only he were here. After dinner, we all sat on the balcony enjoying the moon. Ethan leaned against me, dozing off. Grandma, he mumbled. Can I have your breakfast again tomorrow? Of course you can, I stroked his hair. How about we have breakfast together every day from now on? His voice grew quieter. Our whole family. My heart warmed. I looked at Daniel and he smiled and nodded. Late at night, after the guests had gone, I sat alone in the study, flipping through William's old photo album. My fingers traced his young face as if I could travel back in time and touch the man who had loved me more than life itself. William, I whispered, our little family is whole again. Outside, a bright moon hung in the sky, its silver light bathing the world. The cherry blossoms swayed gently in the night breeze, their falling petals like a soft, gentle snow. Tomorrow would be another new day.